Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, Tim and I are talking about the science of relationships. So this is once again a two-parter. We just don't have enough time really to talk in one episode about all the things that we want to talk about when it comes to whatever the subject matter is. Last week was depression and addiction, and this week is relationships. Now, this could go off in so many different subsections. Relationships, I mean, it's something that every single human on this planet is in. You're in a relationship, whether it be one that's happy, one that's contented, or one that's fractured and broken. You're still in a relationship of some sort. So we all experience relationships from the time that we're born. So this episode today is about the science behind relationships. So it'll help you understand a little bit about why you're attracted to the people you're attracted to, and maybe why certain people, don't do it for you. And there's not much there. There's lots of factors that go into it. So I'm going to talk very quickly about some of the different theories behind the science of relationships. And then I'm going to focus on three that I think are really important takeaways for all of you to think about and remember. And you can do more work on it if you want to on your own to understand the relationships that you're in your life and why you're in them, why you're choosing to be in them as an adult.
I like it. Just the fact that you're throwing the word science in there, I'm already intrigued.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this.
Well, let's get going. So, the science of relationships, particularly from a psychological viewpoint, it really does involve understanding the complex interplay of biological, psychological, and the social factors that contribute to the formation of relationships in your life, the maintenance of relationships, as well as the dissolution of relationships. So I'm going to go through the key concepts. All right. So number one, and many of you may already know about this, number one is attachment theory. Attachment theory has become very popular, I'd say, in the past 5 to 10 years. There's a well-known book I think it's called Attached, and I'm looking right now at my books to see if I have it here. I probably don't have it because it is such a popular book that my adult children have taken it and have read it in trying to understand their relationships with their boyfriends and girlfriends. And no, it's not here because someone heisted it, and I don't think I'm getting it back. So attachment is a very popular theory, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about. There's social exchange theory, and there's interdependence theory. I'm not going to go into detail about those because I don't want to bore you all. I find them actually to be a little bit boring too. Very quickly, social exchange theories posits that relationships are based on the costs and rewards associated with them. So people seek to maximize the rewards, which is love, support, companionship, and minimize the costs in a relationship, which is conflict and stress. We look for people based on where there is less conflict, less stress, and love, support, and companionship. It's kind of common sense in a way. I don't think it's this. It's just a theory that's kind of like wah-wah. I mean, it is one, but I don't think it's...
It kind of follows life.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not like earth-shattering.
It's like the path of least resistance, right? You just do that, you drive into work, same thing.
And it's the balance of these factors that influences satisfaction and commitment in relationships. So you're going to have conflict and stress in a relationship. You want it to be balanced, or you want it to be more weighted towards love, commitment, understanding, trust, companionship. Okay. And the other one, interdependence theory, really it's refinement of the social exchange theory. It focuses on how partners' outcomes are intertwined. So it highlights the importance of mutual dependence on one another, where the actions of one partner significantly affect the other. So, I mean, you can think about that in our relationship, Tim. This interdependence theory, our actions absolutely do affect one another. It's looking for the person who maybe would be the right fit for you in life. When you're dating and you're getting to know somebody, interdependence theory would come in when you're thinking about, is this person a fit for me? Is this someone where we have the same goals in life, but we also are connected in our psychology, in our emotions, and there's an understanding between us so that, how I'm living my life, you're pretty much in agreement with it. How you're living your life, I'm in agreement with it. We both are bought in and saying, yes, we're going to do this. So yes, we're going to have stress, we're going to have conflict, and we do. But for the most part, we love each other, we are companions to one another, and we're dependent on one another in our relationships for our happiness. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's like a business transaction, right? Like
the way I'm saying it sounds transactional.
Well, in a sense that like both sides have to, I don't want to use the word win, but be good with how the relationship works together. Like,
right.
Like your give and take and my give and take. I have to be good with yours and you have to be good with mine. And they have to work together for the common goal, which we would have already defined years ago. Right?
You know, it's funny. I didn't think about it till right now when you said this. I'm looking at these theories: social exchange theory and interdependence theory. Social exchange theory sounds transactional, and interdependence, you know, is a branching off of social exchange theory. So yeah, they do sound transactional. Well, relationships sometimes, I mean, we have to look at that piece, right? I mean, now we tell our kids, and I tell clients, I mean, you could love one another, but love is not always what makes I mean, I go back and forth because it's not always love that makes relationships successful. It's communication. It is finances. It's dealing with your unresolved issues from your past. And if you don't deal with them, they're going to come up in your current relationships, in your marriages, in your partnerships. I think there's a lot to it. It's at some level, there is a social exchange or a transaction. I think love needs to be the foundation, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the foundation. So I think of it this way. So I think of it like vacation, right? Like it's hard to go somewhere and have a bad vacation, right? So that's the love, that's the fluff of like a relationship.
Oh my gosh, I've been on bad vacations.
Yeah, but okay, not.
I digress.
Yeah, but like for the most part, like you go on vacation and it's like you relax and you have a good time and you enjoy right. and all of those things, and you will eventually come back to reality of your everyday life, which is similar to like our relationship. Like we'll have good times, we'll have times that are tougher, but we always come back, and we have to be solid with the spot that we come back to. Right? Like when we come back to our managing our life together, you have to do what you do best, right? Your skill set, you have to fire on all cylinders. And same with me, because we have agreed that we're going to manage life together, and it's not going to be easy every day. It's going to be difficult and challenging, right? And it's fun to go on vacation. You come back and you're like, okay, now we got to get back after it. You know, there's things to do. And we have to be good. Like if you and I didn't gel in that sense, there's no way we'd be 17 years down the road already, right? That would never happen.
Yeah.
Right.
I think vacation is easy for a lot of. I just am thinking about vacation is easy for a lot of people.
Totally.
You know, it's the everyday stuff that's so difficult.
Exactly.
For couples.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways.
All right. So those are the theories. Some of the, you know, the research, the science behind relationships and what makes them successful or what makes them unsuccessful. All right. So let's go into what I think is the most important, really, that I mentioned earlier is attachment theory. So your attachment style as an adult is really important. Okay. So this was developed by John Bowlby. I studied attachment theory I think even in undergrad, but really went into it more in graduate school, and is expanded by Mary Ainsworth. So, you know, if you're interested, you can go to your bookstore, you can go online to Amazon, and you can put in the search bar attachment, and you're going to find all kinds of books on attachment theory, attachment styles. All right. So what is most important for you all to remember is that, and everyone's going to try and figure out, if you haven't already done this, what your attachment style is. It's almost like what's very popular today, and I do like it myself, is the book about Gary Chapman wrote the 5 love languages. And I hear it. It's like common everyday discussion with friends, with clients about, this is my love language. They're talking about relationships. Like, well, I like acts of service. I'm somebody who likes to receive gifts. That's love language. Attachment style is also very popular today, where clients will come to me we've never discussed it, and they'll talk to me about a relationship. They say, well, I'm like, I'm anxiously attached to her, or I'm anxiously attached to him. Like, okay, so you've probably read attached, or you've been online, you've done some of your own homework on this. So there's 4 different types of attachment styles, which I'm going to go over very briefly. There's secure attachment, there's anxious attachment, there's avoidant attachment, and there's a disorganized attachment. So secure attachment is somebody who's securely attached. When you think about attachment, I want you to think about the early years of the first years of your life. 0 to 3 is where we develop. Well, a lot goes on those first 3 years of a baby's life in our brains and in our development. And this is where attachment comes into play. So if you had a doting, caring mother and or caregiver, if your needs were met, if you were shown love and affection, you were a lot of touching, a lot of eye contact, being spoken to, that we do with babies. Those are the beginnings of a really wonderful secure attachment. So secure attachment individuals, they feel comfortable with intimacy, and they're more and most likely to have healthy, stable, lasting relationships. They're comfortable with intimacy because they received emotional, physical intimacy as babies. We all did, hopefully. Okay.
So
I shouldn't say we all did, hopefully.
Yeah,
take that back. We didn't all.
Right. Because I'm wondering, is it just as critical for the baby / infant that didn't get that?
Well,
does that roll out in a negative way throughout the rest of their life? Much of the time? All of the time? What do you think?
It plays a role throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah.
This is the work that many, many, many people need to do. And this is in psychotherapy. I do think that's the gold standard if you want to work on if you have attachment issues. Once you have the knowledge, you're listening to this podcast and you've got some question marks in your mind about, what's my attachment style? How am I with attachment? Think about your relationships in your life. Think about former boyfriends, girlfriends. Think about maybe even your friendships. Think about how you behave, how you act, how you are in relationships. That might give you a clue about your attachment style. Okay. And if that's something that, you're curious about this, I would recommend you go further with this after you listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
It's important work. It's important work.
Because you might not even have memories, like distinct memories between the ages of 1 and 3 to
0 to 3.
Yeah. To understand that there was this negative influence on you as an infant / toddler, right? Yeah. Like you might not even know that happened.
Well, you don't know from 0 to 1 years old.
Yeah. You don't know, but it could be critical.
They used to say that you could not. I remember in graduate school, my professor, one of my human behavior classes, saying there's no memory under the age of 3, and I remember saying that is not true because I have a vivid memory, and my parents told me I was 15 months. I have a vivid memory of being in a hospital because I had croup as a baby. I was very sick at a rare case. I had it twice, rare, extreme case of croup, and ended up with a tracheotomy. So they had to trach me because I was dying. And I remember vividly being in a crib. But that's all I remember. But I had these vague memories. And it wasn't until I knew that. There was just something I just knew that I was in. And not just because my parents told me I was in the hospital. I had heard that story my whole life. But I did have a memory of being in a crib, metal rods like up and down because it was the pediatric. I was on the peds floor. And, there's metal rods like institution style crib. That's all. And it was vague.
I have this scene from Elf in my head right now.
Elf.
Right? Elf when Santa came down the chimney and he's in that crib standing up and then he like lowers it down. He runs across the floor.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
But then when I was in my first job out of graduate school, when I worked in pediatric intensive care unit, peds ICU, and I walked into it was probably during my orientation, my first, maybe it was even, I don't know if they took me through there on the tour when I was being interviewed, but maybe it was my first day on the job. And I walked in the peds ICU and it's it's an open floor. So it's, there's a nurse's station in the middle and the cribs are all around. I saw these cribs And there was one crib in particular that had a mist tent, a plastic covering over it, had a mist tent. The child had croup, severe case of croup. And I had this flashback. It was so weird. I looked at it and I said to myself, I was in that. I was in one of those. It just immediately, I was in that. I don't know how I know that or where, but I was in one of those. And I called my parents that night. I said, yeah, was there a plastic covering? My dad said, yeah, you were in a mist tent. My dad was a doctor. Yeah, it was a mist tent because you had croup. I said, oh my gosh, like it just came flashing back to me. So I refute anybody. And now we do think differently about memory and trauma, because that probably was a traumatic event for me. I do remember. And I said, how old was I? My dad said, you were 15 months. You remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Wow. That's all I remember, but I do remember it.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. So all that to say, so secure attachment, let's hope that many of us have that. Many of us don't. Okay. So we go into anxious attachment. And this is where individuals, they'll crave closeness, but they fear abandonment. So it can really lead to a sense of dependency and anxiety about the relationship. So, I will see this with clients where, maybe they get into an argument, they get into a fight with their partner, their boyfriend, girlfriend, and the person kind of pulls away a little bit or is mad at them, doesn't really want to talk in that moment. They go towards them anxiously, like, wait, because it feels like, please, 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 like, and you can think about this for yourself, for the listener, if this is something that might resonate for you. Not everybody maybe is this extreme, but it's a feeling on the inside of, I'm going to lose this relationship. And so what happens is we become more anxious about the relationship. We become more anxious about wanting that person in our life. Okay. So that's one I see quite a bit. And then the next one is avoidant attachment. So you're avoidantly attached to somebody. So this is an individual, there's the same person, you're in a fight, you're in an argument, you're mad at each other. That person's going to distance themselves from their partner. They're going to, and they tend to be more of a person that struggles with intimacy and they struggle with emotional expression. So that's avoidant. They're attached, but they're avoidantly attached. And, the cocktail or the mix that we don't like to see so much, that we often see in therapy. So that's a good thing, is the couple that one is anxiously attached and another is avoidantly attached. They are like oil and water when they get into a fight, because the anxiously attached person wants to talk to them. Let's be together, and get stressed about that. You're not talking to me and we need to resolve this. And the avoidant person's like, move away. I need my space. And you doing that is turning me off even more. So get away. Do you see that? See, one's going towards the person. The other person is like, get away, like, right. Move away.
Right.
That's not a good mix.
How do you, so just think about, like, you're going through life and you're in and out of these relationships. Like, how do you, or maybe you cannot, but like, is it possible to identify that? Can you define your situation?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But then how do you define or look for, like, okay, I don't want that opposite I don't want to be with that opposite, but how do you know that? How do you see that? Or does it just show itself during life?
That's time. That's dating someone. That's getting to know someone. It's living life with them. It's getting into scuttles with each other. But
that could be down the road for you a while.
Well, that's why,
right?
That's why discernment is so important.
Yeah.
And, choosing your mate. Discernment is something I don't think we do enough of. There's discernment counseling. You're discerning if this person is right for you. And if you're not sure, I think many people who are dealing with attachment issues in the relationship ought to seek the help of a therapist, a couples therapist who can help them, for you to discern, is this somebody I want to be with? Is this something that I can move past? Okay, so I don't have a secure attachment because I got stuff from my childhood, and probably stuff that goes back to the years when I was a little baby, and I don't even really know. But all I know is I'm not real close to my mom. I never really have been. I don't know what she was like when I was one. I heard from my grandmother, heard from my aunts, and maybe she was good, maybe she wasn't so good, or maybe my mom wasn't even around. Maybe I was raised by my aunt. Maybe I was raised in foster care. Maybe I was raised by my grandfather. That's why this is so nuanced, and this is each individual's, I would say, your work to do. And you to work on that, and we'll get into that in part 2 of this. But I think that for this conversation, there's so much out there today on the internet and so much that you can read about attachment style that you can easily do this work, and you don't have to see a therapist in the beginning about this. You can do this on your own. There's even free attachment style tests on the internet now that you can take, so you can understand, am I avoidant attachment person? Am I an anxious attachment person? Or the fourth one, do I have a disorganized attachment? So those are individuals who exhibit a mix of anxious and avoidant behavior. So sometimes they may act as avoidant, and sometimes they may act anxiously attached, and at other times maybe avoidantly attached. But they're like, I'm out. We're not talking about this. I'm out. I'm going to give you the silent treatment for 48 hours. And then maybe the next time that they get worried about the relationship or something happens, they're clingy to their partner, and because they're anxious something's going to happen. They don't have psychological or emotional safety in the relationship. So they can go both ways.
Right.
Okay. So that can be due to, once again, I've already said it, but that can be due to past trauma or inconsistent caregiving of you, the person who goes back and forth. You were inconsistently cared for and loved and nurtured. Maybe you were, and maybe you weren't. Maybe you were, and maybe you weren't. And maybe you weren't, and maybe you weren't. And then maybe you were. So it's different for each person. But you all can understand this for yourself by doing a little bit of work on the side.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Yeah, I do think it's important to know this about oneself.
Yeah. So here's a side conversation that we can have a different time, but I think this would be something fascinating, would be like, so as you're discerning somebody and deciding, is this the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? At what point do you, or maybe you don't, but at what point do you become okay overlooking some of these things? Because there's other things about this person that at that time are more attractive to you. Right?
Okay, give me an example of that.
Well, like you love spending time with this person because they like to do some of the fun stuff that you like to do. And, you feel like you gel in so many different ways. But at the same time, you've got some big time things where you're opposites, right? But you tend to kind of like maybe don't really spend a lot of time looking at that, and probably we should. Right? Because maybe
you ought to.
Yes, because maybe that's the thing that's going to cause you to have some massive trouble later.
Well, that's discernment. That's the discernment piece that I was just talking about. I think that everybody needs to think about what are their deal breakers.
Right.
What are your non-negotiables in a relationship?
But isn't there, I got to imagine for a lot of us, though, we don't want to look at those things because we're so great with all the other things.
Well, it will look at you 10 years down the road.
Right.
It will stare you in the face if you don't look at it. That will not go away. I mean, we kind of go like, la, 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 I see no evil. I can't see it. Like it's like putting our hands over our ears, our eyes, and our mouth. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? Like, la, 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 I'm just going to ignore it, pretend that that's not there.
Right.
But what happens is it becomes the big white elephant in the family room of your condo or your house.
Eventually.
That everybody tiptoes around, steps over his foot, steps over the tail, but it's there.
Yeah.
And that I've seen that quite a bit over the years in my practice. I think that you make a really good point. You can try to look the other way but you've got to listen to that still small voice inside of you. I would say you got to listen to it if you want to have a successful relationship. There is no perfection. And for any of you and all of you that listen to this podcast, I'm always going to say there's no perfection here. This is our life's work, and it's not perfect and it's not linear. It's one step forward, two steps back. We're all over the place. We're all kind of a mess going through it. We're all trudging through the mud, trying to work. For this episode, we're talking about trying to work on our relationships with our paramours, our lovers, our life partners, our spouses. And I think that it does you no good to avoid or deny that there are issues there. I would encourage you to look at them And if you don't want to look at them, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What are you afraid of that you don't want to look at something in that relationship that's bothering you? If it's bothering you, that may be your sixth sense, your intuition telling you, tapping you on the shoulder, tapping you, going, you got to look at this. Pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Give it some time. What are you afraid of? And that's it. And I really do mean that question. It's not rhetorical. Ask it of yourself. What are you afraid of? What are you staying away from? Well, maybe I want to get married. I want to have children. I want to have a family, and time is running out. I feel like and I think women are feeling less and less that way because of all the advances in fertility. And I am still seeing it. Or even if it's not about fertility or wanting to have a family, I want to be with someone. I want a companion. Everybody's all partnered up now. I don't want to be alone. I want love. I want love in my life. By all means, we all ought to have and deserve to have love in our lives. But there are things with this person that are bothering you. Look at those issues and see if it's something that you can work through. Is it work you need to do? Is it work that that person needs to do? Would you go to couples therapy with that person? Maybe you could do it through that medium with a third person who's objective, who's asking the questions to make you and your partner really think. And I know it can be scary, but I'm telling you, I've seen this so many times. It's even scarier down the road. Now there may be kids involved, and now you're going through a divorce, or you're breaking up the estate, and your heart's broken, and you're angry, and you're pissed, and you're sad, and you're depressed.
Yeah.
I used to say almost every time to couples when I was doing a lot more couples work, you all should have been in here 4 years ago. You should have been here 10 years ago, because one of them had their foot out the door. One of them was dragged there, brought there by the other person who's like, this is my last ditch effort. We're going to see a couples therapist. And the other person's like, oh, fine, I'll go. I saw this over and over and over. And it wasn't never, but it was rare that I saw both individuals of the couple who were there wholeheartedly. And it was, in a way, not salvageable, but at the same time, almost too late. As therapists, we can't make people want to be in relationships. We can't make people want to work it out, right? I mean, we're there to help, guide you, but you got to want to do the work, and you got to want to be in this relationship. And that was something that I saw. And the thing about it that seemed to come up time and time again was that there were signs and there were clues many years back that maybe this may not have been the best fit, or that this couple had not done the emotional psychological work that they needed to do as individuals before they came together. And there wasn't a commitment to doing the hard work now today to keep that marriage or that partnership going and make it successful and thriving.
Right. And I think, and the toughest part about this whole scenario that you're talking about is like, you're putting all of this at the feet of a person that's in their 20s. Maybe in their 30s,
30s,
right? So
40,
you don't have the life experiences yet, potentially, to be able to think that far down the road, right? A lot of times, it's a tough one.
It is. And you said 20s. I see it in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I see it, and not just first-time marriages and first-time partnerships. I see it in second marriages. I see it in this person's on their third wife, or they're on their fourth live-in partner.
Right. But to my point, I think if they had taken some of this time on their first wife, right, then maybe they wouldn't be on 2, 3, 4. I think but I mean, that's the message.
Or they might, or they still might. But I get your point.
Yeah, they might. But like, it's like, how do you
do the work? To do the
work. And I'm talking to us too, because like this is our second marriage. So it's like had we done more discernment and more time spent digging into that, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, would it be different? I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's hard because you're asking somebody that's so young.
2020. It happened the way it did.
Yeah.
We didn't know each other. Right. It's really hard to look back and do that. I don't really like to do it because it gets us nowhere.
No, it doesn't.
We are,
but I think what we're trying to do is give people that listen to this podcast that are in their 20s, 30s, like some ammunition, right? Some things to think about.
Well, yeah, I think our kids have all been affected. Well, I know all 5 of our kids have been affected by our divorces from their biological parent. They've told us.
Yeah.
They've pressed the pause button. I mean, the youngest is 20. How old's Tyler? 22. Forget. Jeez, 22, 23.
22.
And the older ones, no one's married yet, and we're late 20s going into 30. No one's married. A couple are unreal. One's in a serious relationship now. A couple have come out of serious relationships, but nobody's getting married right now anytime soon. And that's because I know they've heard me say, take your time, take your time. Don't do what I did. I got married at 24 to the person I was married, dating all through college. And it was, I mean, my brain just stopped developing at 24. Males, they say, is 25, 26. I mean, too young, too immature, hadn't lived enough of life. And we really change in our 20s. And I know they have been affected. So yeah, to your point. And I say to them, do the work, do the emotional, psychological work, and really discern for yourself and get help if you need it, but spend some time and pray about it. If you're a spiritual person, really, so go to therapy, meditate, pray, really discern if this person is the one for you, because most people today go into marriage saying this is it for the rest of my life. I don't think most people say, if it doesn't work, I just get divorced. I think most people are not doing that. I don't hear it. I think most people aren't even thinking it. I think they think this is my person.
They think it, but I mean, the statistics
50%
say otherwise.
50%. Yeah. They're not doing doing the very important emotional, psychological work that they need to do before they decide to partner up in life.
Right. I think maybe
we've gotten way off topic.
It's okay. It's good. I mean,
I know.
I think a good conversation would be to bring one of our 5 kids on here and talk about this and ask them what's going on in their head as a 20 to early 30-year-old person. Were there moments of pause? Did you think it through differently? Did you look for things because of what happened? The experiences that you had with your parents when you were little, like does that affect you?
Have been affected.
Yeah,
told me.
I would like to hear them talk about that.
Yeah, it's different because like the younger ones, the boys, they actually don't remember us being married to our former spouses. Both of them have said, I have no memory of that. And all I have memory of is you two together as our parents, and then their dad and their mom with their partners. They don't know their biological parents being together. And, I know for you and I, they've told us they see security and stability, and they are from a divorced family. So they have done the back and forth at parents' houses, sleeping here this night, sleeping here that weekend, and that absolutely. And you and I are not from that. Our parents are not divorced, and we did not have that experience growing up. So we don't know what it's like for them.
Right.
They have been affected.
Right.
But I think the older ones, the first 3, they've all been affected, and they've told us
totally
because they have memories.
Yeah.
Okay. So attachment, that's something to really think about when you're thinking about, you want to understand the science behind relationships. This is a big one. It's popular today. Look at your attachment style. Like I said, you can go online, you can take an attachment test, you can read books. The one that's out right now, Attached, is very popular, but there are other ones out there as well. Okay. So the next one, we went way over, but I'm going to go through this quickly because I think it's important. So, I think it's important to understand your communication style and how you do conflict resolution. So, and I may do an entire episode on this because this is so important. I think that most people need to take an advanced class in communication, like the 401 level college course in communication when it comes to intimate relationships. What I see over and over and over and over again with therapy and coaching clients is communication that could be improved. People are not talking enough to each other. For this episode, loved ones or intimate partners, they're not talking enough about their issues, what their thoughts are, what their feelings are about the relationship, about you, the other person, about me. We're not talking to each other enough, and it's really tripping people up. There's a lot of fear around it. I think that, and what I know happens is that when we're not talking, it builds up inside of us and it comes out sideways in anger and snarkiness, and communication just continues to break down even more.
Yeah.
So, effective communication, it is crucial for healthy relationships. So many of you may already know about John Gottman. He wrote the New York Times best-selling book, is it The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work? That book I'm looking for as well. I don't think I gave that one away. I've bought it so many times. So I'm trained in Gottman up to level 2. I think there's 3 levels. There are 3 levels. I'm trained up to level 2. And I didn't continue with Gottman's training because it's formulaic and it works very well for some couples. I personally did not practice that way. So they teach you a formula for doing couples therapy. It's the Gottman method. And I did not want to just be working within the Gottman method in my practice, in my work with couples. I wanted to pull in other therapists, other theories, other ways of thinking that I also liked as well. So I didn't continue with it. But I've went to the conferences, did all the continuing education. So I know quite a bit about Gottman. And one thing he says in his book, I can find it here, Tim. Can you go look over there on my bookshelf?
We'll bring it out in part 2. How about that?
Oh, there it is right there. I want to show it to you if you're watching on YouTube so you can get this book, because this is a great book. What John Gottman talks about in his research is he identified key behaviors that predict success in a relationship. What he is known for is, I think it was in 1998, was it 88 or 89? Like 30, 40 years ago, he predicted through his research with his wife, as well as another researcher, I forget his name, within like 2 minutes or 5 minutes of observing a couple, he could predict with like 98% accuracy if you would get divorced or not. And he was in,
wow.
Yeah. And he posited this and it ended up being true. He could accurately predict if you were divorced. And he had this, in the state of Washington, he had this, like, I think it was like a love camp or something, where couples would come for the weekend and stay in these cabins, and they fitted the cabins with hidden cameras everywhere. So they would observe and watch these couples that were there for like 2 nights, just watch their interactions and how they were. And he accurately predicted they're going to get divorced. They're going to stay together. They're going to divorce. It's fascinating. I remember watching it in 60 Minutes, it's like in 1990 or something.
Well, did he share? Like, what was it?
So here they are. These are predictors of success, the predictors of failure.
Okay.
He calls them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of your relationship. If he saw criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and or stonewalling, then he could predict if you would divorce. So, and the antidotes to those are a gentle startup, appreciation for one another, taking responsibility, and physiological self-soothing. If he saw that, he could predict that relationship would stay together. So think about it. It really does make sense. So I talk all the time. I've said it. I mean, I know you've heard me talk about that's a negative startup. It's a negative startup. I talk about it like in my own life with like my family members, like, okay, that's a negative startup because you don't walk in the door, or you really ought not to walk in the door from work in a bad mood and just start going after somebody. That's a negative startup. That's not going to bode well for that conversation or even the mood or the ambiance for the rest of that evening. And I'll be honest, I know I've been in a bad mood before and I've done it to you because I'm like mad about something in myself. A lot of times it's anxiety or anger inside of me about something with work or frustration. Not about a client, but just like some process or so, I don't know, or I get overwhelmed with all the work I have to do. And what I'll do is I'll see you and it's a negative startup with you. And you know me well enough that you don't do it all the time, but sometimes just say, what's really going on? You're like, what's really going on? Because you must think to yourself, it's not about me because I just saw her and she's kind of being bitchy right now.
I just walked in the door.
I just walked, right. And you're good about that. And that really helps to bring me down. I'm like, okay, well, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. And it's really very helpful. Taking responsibility. So I'll take responsibility. I'm sorry. And I'll say to you, like, I'm sorry I was so bitchy, taking responsibility. If you were able to do those things, if you're able to show appreciation to each other, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. That's what bodes well for a relationship, and the chances are you will make it. But if you are more times than not showing contempt, you're getting defensive when the other person tries to call you out or calls you out on something, and you can't accept something and take responsibility. If you stonewall, that's ignoring somebody. That's walking away from somebody. If you're critical of them all the time, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
A relationship cannot withstand that.
No.
Nobody wants to be around that all the time.
You're running the opposite.
You're like, I'm out. This is toxic and I don't want to be around it.
Totally true.
So communication is really, really important. There's science behind, look, I just said, there's the research that John Gottman, and that's just one person, his wife, Julie, did. The science behind the importance of communication. I cannot underscore this enough. Actually, I would say even more than attachment styles is you've got to work on your communication and how you resolve conflicts. You can have totally different attachment styles. That's okay. You got to learn how to talk to each other, and you got to learn how to resolve stuff.
This is such an important topic. Like I
feel like we need to do more on this.
Yeah. So why is it?
Because we could do a deep dive on this.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, I could. Yeah. I mean, there's so many conversations I've had and over the years, and clients will say, I'm afraid to tell them this or that. I'm afraid to say this or that. Or, they say I'm not like that. I'm not like that. And I get to know them so well as their therapist or coach. I mean, those are psychologically and emotionally intimate relationships that I have with my clients. It's a wonderful honor to be in their life. And I'm privy to their inner thoughts and feelings. And they tell me things, and I say to them, go tell them that. Go tell them what you just told me. And I say, you communicate. You communicate well. You communicate well with me. Well, it's because you're not my husband. You're not my wife, or you're not my partner, but you know how to do it because you just did it.
Right.
So take what you just said right here, right now, and tell that to them.
And it's such an opposite statement. Like your partner, your husband should be the one that you're comfortable going to,
because it's so
right?
loaded.
Yeah,
a lot, and that's okay. That's the importance of doing the background stuff.
Yeah.
Which is for episode 2. Okay. So for this episode, communication and your ability to resolve conflicts is really, really important, as evidenced by the research done by just one person alone, John Gottman. That's all you need. That's all you need to know. Okay. The next piece that's really important in the success of a relationship is self-disclosure and vulnerability. Self-disclosure is the sharing of personal information. It fosters intimacy and trust in relationships. So there is science behind this. There's science behind being vulnerable with people that you're in intimate relationships with. It allows for much deeper connection. It provides for psychological safety. And I think some of this just goes without saying. It's kind of, we take it for granted, and it's important to mention it. Self-disclosure and being able to be vulnerable to that person in your life is really important. You got to have that. If you don't have that, that's not a good sign. Okay. And then last, but really not least, and I have thought to do an episode on this alone as well, is the ability for you to be able to emotionally regulate yourself. Emotional regulation and having empathy for the other person. So learning how to emotionally regulate is so important. And there's actually a therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, that teaches emotion regulation to individuals who struggle with this. Okay. So this is, emotion regulation is really about being able to manage your emotions and respond to what's going on around you in healthy ways. Emotional ways, but healthy emotional ways. So we're talking learning how to manage your anger, manage your frustration, maybe manage a snark, manage the tone in your voice. It's all, paying attention to what's going on inside of you, learning how to manage those emotions, and learning how to communicate in healthier ways emotionally for you and for the people around you.
Yeah.
Namely, in this case, your intimate, your lover, your husband, your wife, your partner. Okay. And then the ability to have empathy the ability to be able to understand and share the feelings of others, being able to putting yourself in the other person's shoes, trying for a minute, put yourself in their shoes, imagine what it might be like to be them. Imagine what it might be like to feel the way they feel right now. Okay, that's not how I feel, but I'm really going to put myself in his or her shoes. And yeah, I guess I would suck if that was me and someone said that to me, I wouldn't like it. That's empathy. You're going, okay, yeah, I guess, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said it. Yeah, I guess I did say it that way, even though I don't really remember talking to you in that snarky tone. But I can imagine how I'd feel if, you spoke that way to me, or my colleague spoke that way to me. It'd piss me off, or it would shut me down. I wouldn't want to talk to you. So empathy is really important for the success of a relationship. Okay. This is how we, maintain those emotional connections in our lives with our loved ones.
Just being able to like imagine how you sound, right? Like
take a minute, right? Think about how you sound, right?
The skill set of just being able to hear yourself, whether it's good or bad.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do. It's nearly impossible. But like
it's not impossible, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through this. So this is about the science of relationships and what makes them successful or unsuccessful. So number one, if you want to know more, look at your attachment style. Okay. So look at the relationships in your life and look at how you are. Go to attachment. Look at, are you securely attached individual? Are you someone who has anxious attachment? Are you somebody who is more avoidantly attached to people around you? Or do you have the disorganized attachment type? Okay. Next is communication and conflict resolution. That was all about Gottman. And I'll get the book out in a minute and show it to you if you're watching on YouTube. So look at your communication. It probably for most of us can always be improved. I think learning how to say I'm sorry and to say a mea culpa is so, so important. So learning how to swallow one's pride, eat humble pie and say, hey, I'm wrong, can go a long way in relationships. That's communication. The next one is self-disclosure and vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable, to expose yourself to the person that you're in the intimate relationship with. It builds trust. It actually builds integrity for you as a person. It's so, so important. And last but not least is emotion regulation, empathy, being able to regulate your own emotions, being able to have conversations, have tough ones without being mean and nasty or getting angry or falling into a deep, deep depression, regulating those emotions and having empathy for others, having empathy for your partner. These are 4 big tenets that there's science behind. If you can work on these, it bodes well for you in your future, in your loving or your romantic relationships. Okay, so let me get the book. Tim, you can talk to the audience for a minute.
I have this visual of that scene in Airplane where they take the automatic pilot and like they take him out of the seat and that airplane goes basically nosedive down. Okay. Like I feel like I'm gonna
I just left you alone on the podcast.
I'm gonna send this thing down in flames.
Okay. Well, that didn't happen.
We made it back.
That was like 5 seconds.
Good.
All right, this is the book. It's John Gottman. Okay, so you can find it everywhere. It's a best-selling book. The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. He talks about the 4 horsemen in here. I actually recommend it all the time to my clients, coaching and therapy. And it's funny because I just had a client, a therapy client, recommended it to her. And she's like, yeah, I bought 2, one for me and one for my husband. And they're both reading it. So that's great. I love that. They're both taking their time. They're reading it. I want to look right now at and so the authors are John Gottman and Nan Silver. I forgot her name. I didn't want to keep her out. Nan Silver. And he wrote this book in 1999. There you go. That's how old this book is. And it's gold. It's just gold. It's timeless. So take a minute, go and pick that book up and start there. And then once again, if you want to learn more about attachment, get the book Attached. Forget the name of the author. And you can go online and you can even take some surveys on there to find out your attachment style. Okay, everyone, I hope that this was helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast. Rate, review. The reviews are so, so important. Rate with 5 stars. Write us a review. I read them. I'm so appreciative of them. And we'll see you next time.
All right.
All right. Take care.